Hi, I'm Wendy Tarasoff. I'm here to talk about the Writer's Pen sentence course and give you a little basic overview of where we're headed. First of all, the importance of these sentences in the English language for your communications is vital. Because it's vital, it affects your relationships with people. It affects the background of finance with just whatever you're doing there. So what I realized is I was much like most people. I hadn't gone to university. I was in the workforce for 10 years. And I discovered that I needed to go back. And so I went back and found out that basically I was functionally illiterate. And so what this meant is I had E-level papers and I needed to learn the basics, which were never really taught to me. And so I didn't have them. And so I feel a great deal of empathy for people who don't have them or who want to improve them to the level of going from E-level to writing it, for instance, an A++ level play, or to write children's books, or to write essays, or to improve their communication skills. So we're going to start with the basics. And from the basics, we're going to go systematically up the chain of different kinds of sentences on a gradient. So what do you need to know before you can move to those levels? It's kind of like you need baby steps. So what are the baby steps? Let's look at what a sentence is composed of. It's composed of a subject and a verb. So let's look at the subject of a sentence as either who or what. So basically, it could be John Smith, it could be John Cage, what could be a dog, it could be Bowser, and that is what a subject is. Now, subjects also are composed of different things. For example, nouns and pronouns. So I will explain those. A noun means name. So we name things. For example, we name cats and dogs and computers. You get a brother, which is a type of computer. You get lights. You get desk. Words like that name things, right? That's all they're doing is naming. And what a pronoun is a pronoun is a word that says for the noun. So it means it replaces the noun. So a pronoun can be I, we, you, he, she, it, and they. And these words are very specific in English, right? In other words, when you say, I am speaking, you mean that you are speaking. If you say you are speaking, it means the other person is speaking. And if you say he is speaking, you're speaking of a third person who's speaking. Okay. Now that's the overview of a subject, right? So let's look at the subject in more depth. A person's name is a noun. It names him, John Cage, Stephen King, or it can be your own name. It can also be a place like Mount St. Helens, New York, Penticton. It can also be a thing, marshmallows, pen, desk, computer. It usually comes first in the sentence. For example, John Cage walked into the room. So you can see that John Cage is a noun and that it's also the subject of the sentence, what or who is being spoken about, and then the verb is walked, right, into the room. And then you can use a pronoun, he turned, so that the he replaces John Cage in the sentence. Now we can also start a sentence with what we call articles, and there's only two articles in the English language. One is a and the other is the. A means one or any one of a group of things. So a cat walked. So the means one, and it's specific to what is already spoken about or written about. So in the first sentence here, we have a cat walked. That's with the word a. Because it's from a group of cats, there is a cat. And in the second sentence, the cat meowed. So now we're talking specifically about that particular cat. So you can get an a or a the in a sentence. And basically, we're going to come back here to looking at a as it relates to the subject of our sentence, right? So when we ask the question, what? We're asking, a tree is tall. So what's being spoken about there is the tree. The A actually modifies it and tells you that it is one tree out of a group of trees. And then let's look at who. So Charlie licked his paws. So Charlie is the subject of the sentence. Who is what is being spoken about. Licked is the verb, and then his paws. So the personal pronouns can also act as the subject or refer back to the subject of someone who's speaking or writing. This actually means in direct language that we're only looking at three things here for this lesson, or four. One of them is the subject, one of them is the pronoun that replaces the subject, and then it's a or the, right, which modify the subject. When you say the cat, you're speaking about one cat that you've already spoken about. So if you said about the cat that the cat's name was Bowser, and then you said the cat walked across the room, you're speaking about Bowser. So I hope that clarifies this part of the language. So here we go in the next section. We've covered off the subject, we've covered off something related to the subject, we've covered off the pronoun. Now we're going to look at the verb. So there's two different types of verbs in English. One is an action verb. It's the state of doingness or action. So some action is taking place in the sentence. When you say I walked, you're saying that you did the walking in past time, right? But the action verb is walked. When you say she talks, she is talking right at this moment in present time. It is an action verb. Okay, so we will find that you can use the pronouns like you sing, we shall get it done, and when you're using shall, it means a future tense of the verb. Right? So what is tense? Tense is time. Okay, so when was the time that it took place? And we have three tenses in English: a past tense, a present tense, and a future tense. So a past tense would be like walked. A present tense would be she talks. So talks would be the present time tense. The leaves danced. So the leaves are actually the subject of the sentence. And danced is in past time. You sing. So is sing a past tense, a future tense? You sing. So obviously it's present tense, right? Because sang is past tense. It's an irregular verb. It doesn't follow the same lingo as the rest of the language, which is really silly, but that's how that's done with that one. So we shall get it done. Right? That's a future tense. So you're using will or shall in that case to make the future. So what I'd like you to do is take a moment out here, write down 10 actions that you do or have done. Great things happen in small steps. Now write them in sentences. Does it state the time of the action was done? Okay, so is it past time, present time, future time? So we've covered off the action verb and the fact that the verb shows time or tense. So the next part of the verb, because there's two different tenses, or two different, sorry, not tenses, but there are two different states of a verb. One of them is action. The other one is state of being. And that can seem confusing, but basically it's the be babies. So is, am, are, was, were, and be. And some extra words in the English language like seems, appears, right? So some of these are present tense, like is a present tense verb, and was is a past tense verb that shows state of being. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So if you say he is happy, the is, which is a be verb, right, which shows state of being, shows him in the state of being happy, but he's happy in present time. So let's look at some other sentences here. He is going home. Is going is the verb, okay? So with the be babies, you can have more than one word that makes up a verb, right? So Kara has been being happy, right? Has been being is the verb. I will be going to the basketball game. I is the person who's speaking. Will shows a future tense. Will be going is the verb. There are only 3 tenses in English that are the most common. If you want, I will send you a complete document of all of the English verbs and how they can possibly be written in English. It's fairly long and quite intensive, and for new beginners, starting with these basic tenses of past time, present time, future time, and seeing where the verb is in the sentence, like an action verb, he walks, very clear. Present tense, right, he's doing it right now, and it's an action verb. He is walking, that is a be baby, and is walking is the verb, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. Now we're going to move on to something which is really interesting for me as a writer, because we use all 3 modes in different types of writing. For example, you will see this more not in an essay because it's mostly fact mode, but you will see it in writing children's books or writing other types of writing. So what are these modes in English and why are they important? Okay, let's look at that. The fact mode is one states something is true. The weather is hot. A fence stands at the back of the property. These are considered facts. And we state them to others, and the other person doesn't see it that it's our opinion. It comes across in fact mode. The next mode is command mode. A command is a direction or instruction or a command. You do the dishes. Wash the floor. You're asking somebody to do something and you're giving them an instruction, or you're asking them to go to the store, which is go in that direction, or you're demanding something from them. You do that, right? So that's command mode. Now thought mode is very interesting, right? These are your thoughts and they come from your mind. Words show something could happen, might happen, but which are not facts. Things such as wishes, desires, possibilities. Words that are used to convey thought mode are words like might, could, would, wish, and ought to. So I wish I could go to the show. We could go together. We might get great seats. None of that is stating a fact. It's stating it's coming directly from your mind. Okay, so basically, why is knowing the modes in English important? In an essay, you will find a lot of fact mode and a lot of action verbs, right? That is what makes an essay, right? But when you get to your conclusion of your essay and you've done everything, you might switch, for example, to thought mode and say it could be this, or it should be that, or it might be this way, or that kind of thing, which is added to your conclusion after you've done all of the facts. So communications without these three modes can appear halting. If something is just in fact mode, it can seem halting or jarring. And that's why it's somewhat bothersome for essays in that sense, is that you really have to have a good command of the action verb and different kinds of sentence structures in order to get around this. And here's an example. The man walked across the street, the man danced on the sidewalk, the man ran home. Right? So it does seem quite halting, doesn't it? As you move up the levels of sentences, you're going to add more things to that. So have a look at this. And I want to talk a little bit about voice, because when you were writing children's books, or you were writing fiction, or you're writing nonfiction, or you're writing an essay, your voice does carry. It's an interesting thing. So let's look at the modes with relationship to this. The night reached a temperature of 40 C, fact mode. I wish the night was not dry and had the smell of flowers, thought mode. Give me a rose for every moment of the day and delight would cross my face, command and thought mode. Right? So you're going to see this very interesting as you go up the levels of the sentences, so keep an eye on it. You can see that the modes are mixed in the last example, even in the same sentences. Teachers make the mistake of not teaching these modes correctly, and they focus instead on just the action verb, but you need all three modes. Now we've gotten to the summary. We've gotten through some fundamentals. We know that a subject in English is who or what. We know that a verb comes in action or it comes in state of being, right? When he sings, he's in present tense and he's in action, right? He's in the process of singing. When he is being something, as in state of beingness, he is in a state of being happy, and the is in present time, so he is happy is showing us the present time tense. Both of these are important because they form the basis of a sentence. The three modes in English help us distinguish between fact, commands, and thought. Without these, speaking and writing would seem choppy and without life in them. Tense basically means time, so there's present time, past time, future time. One can choose to write in one tense or not. One can write in multiple tenses within the same piece of work, right, depending on what you're trying to convey. So sometimes writing in one tense is confusing to a person, right, but you will find certain forms will go in different tenses. For example, the essay goes in past tense, but the past tense verb usually is completed by the end of speaking or writing. So when you say he walked, right, you're basically saying that at the end of that sentence, he has done the walking. So welcome to the sentence literacy course. If you have any questions about what you learned, please don't hesitate to ask. This is where we all start on this course. And it may seem simple, but as you go up the levels, you're going to have to identify in the sentence where your subject is and where your verb is. So we have to cover this data, even though some already know it, right? Thank you very much for listening.